You've probably messed around with a chatbot, right? And you ask it a question, and it gives you this amazing, human-like answer, and you're just left thinking, how on earth does it do that? It honestly feels like some kind of magic. Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain on that magic trick. We're going to demystify what these large language models, or LLMs, really are, and see how they actually work. Okay, so to get our heads around this, let's try a little thought experiment. Imagine you stumble upon a movie script. It's a scene between a person and their AI assistant. But the AI's response has been ripped right off the page. What would you do? Your gut instinct would be to fill in the blank, right? To guess the most likely, most logical next line. Well, believe it or not, in a nutshell, that is exactly what a large language model is doing all the time. Right. So that little script analogy brings us straight to the big question. What is a large language model really? I mean, when you get right down to it, you can forget all the crazy sci-fi stuff you see in movies. The reality is actually way simpler and, honestly, kind of more amazing. At its core, it's the ultimate prediction machine. And that's really the whole secret right there. Strip away all the complexity and an LLM is basically just a giant, incredibly sophisticated mathematical engine that has been built to do one thing and one thing only: predict the very next word in a sequence of text. That's it. Every single one of those long, detailed answers you get from a chatbot, it's being built one word at a time, just like we were trying to finish that movie script. But here's where it gets really clever. The model doesn't just spit out the one most likely word. No, what it actually does is it looks at every single word it knows, we're talking hundreds of thousands of them, and assigns a probability score to each one. So is might have a 45% chance, was might have a 20% chance, and so on. Now, a lot of the time it'll pick the top one, but sometimes, just sometimes, it'll roll the dice and pick a slightly less probable word. And that little bit of randomness, that's the secret sauce. It's why you can ask the same thing twice and get two different natural-sounding replies instead of the same robotic answer every time. Okay, so that's what it does, but how does a machine get so ridiculously good at predicting our language? I mean, it's messy and full of context and nuance. The answer is its training. And when I say training, I mean a process that happens on a scale that is, well, it's pretty much impossible for us to truly wrap our heads around. We're talking about it basically learning from the entire internet. Here's a good way to picture it. Imagine a gigantic machine, just massive, covered in hundreds of billions of tiny little dials. In the AI world, they call these dials parameters. Now, when a model is brand new, every single one of those dials is set completely at random. So if you ask it a question, it just spits out total nonsense, complete gibberish. The entire training process is just the slow, painful, step-by-step process of tuning every single one of those billions of dials until the machine starts making sense. Now, when I say the scale is huge, I really mean it. Let's just try to put this into perspective. Take GPT-3, which is an older model at this point. The amount of text it was trained on, well, if you decided to read it all yourself, without sleeping, without taking a break, 24/7, it would take you more than 2,600 years to finish. And that's an old model. The new ones are trained on way, way more. It's just staggering. But okay, that's just reading the data. That's one thing. What about all the math? What about the sheer number of calculations needed to actually tune those hundreds of billions of dials? How long do you think that would take? Seriously, take a guess. 1,000 years? Maybe 10,000? Nope, not even close. Get this. Even if you had a supercomputer that could perform 1 billion calculations every single second, which is just an insane speed, it would still take you over 100 million years to do all the math required to train one of these big models. That's the mind-blowing, almost cosmic scale of computing power we are talking about here. So this massive training job really happens in two main phases. The first part is called pre-training. This is the brute force part. The model just hoovers up a huge chunk of the internet, and its only goal is to get good at that next word prediction game. Along the way, it accidentally learns grammar, picks up facts, and even starts to develop a kind of reasoning. Then comes phase 2, fine-tuning. This is where humans step in. We give the model feedback, showing it what a good, helpful, and harmless answer looks like. This is what turns it from just a really good autocomplete into a useful AI assistant that you can actually talk to. So you're probably wondering, how in the world is it even possible to do 100 million years worth of math? Well, it's only possible because of a complete game changer, a revolutionary piece of tech that showed up in 2017. It's an architecture called the transformer, and it changed everything. To really get why this was such a big deal, you have to know how it worked before.
The older models, they had to read a sentence one word at a time in a straight line. It was super slow, and honestly, they had a terrible memory. By the time they got to the end of a long paragraph, they literally forgotten what was at the beginning. But transformers, whoa. They don't read sequentially, they just look at the entire block of text and absorb it all at once, processing all the words in parallel. This makes them lightning fast and way, way better at understanding the bigger picture and the context.
So what's the magic trick behind that? How can a model look at everything at the same time and just get it? What's the secret ingredient? Well, it's a brilliant, really elegant mechanism called attention.
Attention is just a fantastic name for what it does. It basically lets every single word in a sentence talk to every other word all at the same time. This lets the model weigh how important each word is to all the others around it. It's how it figures out context. So for example, take the word bank. Does it mean a river bank or a money bank? Well, if the sentence says the boat moored at the river bank, the attention mechanism sees the strong connections between boat and river and bank, and it goes, aha, we're definitely talking about the side of a river here, not the place you go to get cash.
All right, so let's put it all together. Here's the super quick 4-step journey inside the machine. Step 1, every word gets turned into a big list of numbers. Think of it like a unique coordinate for that word. Step 2, this is where attention comes in. It lets all those number lists talk to each other, adding all that rich context. Step 3, the newly contextualized numbers get fed through a bunch of neural networks, which are basically just expert pattern finders. And finally, step 4, the model takes everything it's learned from all that and makes its final single prediction for the next word in the sequence. And then the whole process repeats for the next word. So, okay, we've talked about what an LLM is, and we've talked about how it's built. But that brings us to what is, for me, the most fascinating, kind of spooky part of this whole story. Because the intelligence you interact with, it's not something that engineers actually programmed into the machine. It's something else entirely. And this is the truly mind-bending part. The model's ability to do things like reason or write a poem or explain quantum physics to you, that is an emergent phenomenon. Nobody sat down and coded a poetry module or a reasoning engine. These incredible, complex skills just appeared. They emerged organically out of that one simple foundational task. Get really, really good at predicting the next word over and over again on a gigantic scale. And you know what's wild? This part even baffles the people who build these things. They can design the architecture, they can feed it the data, they can start the training, but the model's internal thought process is a complete black box. As the quote says, it's incredibly challenging, almost impossible, to look inside and figure out the exact reason why it chose to say is instead of was. Which, of course, leaves us with one last massive philosophical question to chew on. We know the mechanics, we understand the math, but if the intelligence itself, the part that feels creative and insightful, is just an emergent property, something that bubbled up that we don't fully control or even really understand, then what exactly are we building here? That's definitely something to think about.